The translator device in Ambassador David Reed's pocket vibrated 3 times, which meant the council was ready. He straightened his jacket and walked through the massive archway into the amphitheater where 47 species waited to judge humanity. The smell hit him first, a mixture of sulfur, ammonia, and something sweet that made his eyes water. Every species breathed something different, and the environmental systems worked overtime to keep everyone alive in the same room. David took his seat in the outer ring, the place reserved for worlds that barely mattered. His team sat beside him, Dr. Anna Petrov, who had spent 30 years studying alien biology, and 2 junior diplomats who looked like they wanted to run. The Tharix delegation sat in the center ring, massive beings with armored skin that reflected the chamber's blue lighting. High Chancellor Vorn stood among them, his 4 arms crossed in a gesture that meant contempt in his culture. The session began without ceremony. A floating orb projected Earth's petition onto every wall, 50 years of probationary membership, now requesting full council status. David had written every word himself, had checked every translation, had made sure nothing could be misunderstood. It didn't matter. High Chancellor Vorn spoke first, his voice booming through the chamber. The translator in David's ear turned the sounds into words. Earth wishes recognition. For what? They learned to travel between stars by copying Sendari engine designs. Their medicine is based on Corvan research. Their weapons are inferior copies of technology we discarded centuries ago. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Not polite disagreement, but actual mockery. The Sendari delegates, small beings with gray skin and large eyes, clicked their mandibles in amusement. The Corvans, who looked like walking crystals, made a sound like wind chimes that their translator rendered as scorn. Anna leaned close to David. We should respond. We should defend ourselves. David shook his head slightly. His face remained neutral, showing nothing. Another delegate stood, a Vraxian with tentacles instead of legs. Humans claim they deserve a voice in galactic affairs. Yet when the Krill threatened the frontier last decade, where was Earth? Hiding behind their single star system, leaving real civilizations to handle real threats. More laughter. David remembered that conflict. Earth had sent intelligence reports about Krill movement patterns, had shared sensor data from their frontier outposts, had offered medical supplies for the wounded. The reports had been filed away without acknowledgement. The supplies had been accepted without thanks. Trade Minister Krell spoke next, a being that looked like a collection of floating rocks held together by energy fields. Earth's economic contribution to the galactic community is negligible. They trade in raw materials and simple goods. They fill no important role that cannot be easily replaced. David thought about the 17 frontier colonies that bought Earth's food shipments, the mining operations that used human-designed drilling equipment because it was cheaper and more reliable, the hospitals that stocked medications Earth produced at a fraction of council prices. Negligible. The debate continued for 3 hours. Every achievement humanity had worked for over 50 years was dismissed, mocked, or attributed to borrowed technology. The translator struggled with some of the insults, offering approximate meanings that were probably kinder than the originals. Finally, High Chancellor Vorn called for the vote. All in favor of granting Earth full council membership. Silence. All opposed. 47 species signaled their rejection. The vote was unanimous. The chamber filled with sounds that David's translator rendered as satisfaction, vindication, proper order restored. High Chancellor Vorn looked directly at David. Earth's petition is rejected. Your species may continue as probationary members, subject to council guidance and limited participation. Perhaps in another 50 years, you will have developed something worthy of our attention. David stood slowly. His junior diplomats looked at him, waiting for the speech he had prepared, the argument they had rehearsed, the evidence they had compiled. Anna's hand gripped the armrest of her seat hard enough that her knuckles turned white. David walked to the speaking platform, the spot where petitioners were allowed brief remarks. The chamber quieted, expecting protest or pleading. He touched the control that activated the room's audio system. The human delegation acknowledges the council's decision. His voice was calm, flat, professional. We have nothing further to discuss. Thank you for your time. He stepped down from the platform and walked toward the exit. His team scrambled to follow, confusion written on their faces. The chamber remained silent, surprised by the brevity. As they passed through the archway, David heard renewed laughter behind them. Let them laugh. In the corridor outside, Anna grabbed his arm. That's it. We're just leaving. We have data, we have evidence of everything Earth has contributed. They don't want to see it, David said. He kept walking toward the docking bay where their shuttle waited. So we give up. David stopped and looked at her. We're not giving up, we're going home. The trip back to Earth took 6 days through the relay gates. David spent most of it in his quarters, writing reports. Not angry reports or emotional appeals, just factual documentation of what had happened. When they docked at Luna Station, a priority message was waiting from the Secretary General. David read it twice, then deleted it. The message had asked him to prepare another petition, to try again in a year with better arguments. That wasn't going to happen. He sent his own message instead, directly to the President of Earth. 4 words: recommend complete diplomatic withdrawal. 24 hours later, every human diplomat in Council space received the same order: pack up, close the offices, come home. No explanations, no drama, no angry statements. Just a quiet, organized retreat from galactic society. When Lyra, a junior observer from the Sendari delegation, checked the diplomatic logs 3 weeks later, she noticed Earth's communication channels had gone dark. Every single one. She flagged it in her report, noting the unusual pattern, but her supervisor dismissed it. They're embarrassed, the supervisor said. Let them sulk, they'll come crawling back when they need something. Lyra wasn't so sure, but she was too junior to argue. She filed the report anyway and went back to monitoring the endless stream of council business. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered that something important had just happened. She ignored it. Everyone ignored it. Lyra's console beeped for the 7th time that morning, alerting her to another closed human facility. She pulled up the data stream and watched as Earth's research station on Mandara 4 went offline. The scientists had packed their equipment, locked the doors, and departed on a transport heading back to Sol. No explanation given, no protest filed, just another empty building on a list that grew longer every day. 3 months had passed since the Council rejected Earth's petition. At first, nobody noticed the silence. Humans had always been quiet, always stayed in the background, but Lyra noticed patterns. Her job was to track diplomatic communications, and the absence of something could tell you more than its presence. She pulled up a comparison chart. 6 months ago, Earth maintained 43 trade offices across Council space. Now there were 3, and those were processing closure paperwork. Human scientific collaborations had dropped from 96 active projects to 0. Military liaison positions, the ones where human observers sat in on Council patrol briefings, all vacant. Every single human working beyond the Sol system was going home. Her supervisor, an older Sendari named Drax, walked past her station. Lyra called out to him. Ambassador Drax, I think we should flag this pattern. Earth has withdrawn completely from galactic society. Drax made a dismissive gesture with his small hands. They're pouting. It's natural for primitive species to react emotionally when they don't get what they want. But sir, they're not making demands or filing complaints. They're just leaving. Exactly. They have nothing to say because they know we were right about their capabilities. Drax moved on to the next row of consoles, leaving Lyra staring at her screens. She wasn't the only one noticing. Trade Minister Krell sent a memo to the council that week, buried in his routine economic report. Lyra read it during her daily briefing scan. The minister noted unusual disruptions in frontier trade routes, specifically mentioning delayed shipments and increased prices for basic goods. The memo suggested monitoring the situation, but recommended no action. High Chancellor Vorn's response was 3 words: noted and dismissed. Lyra dug deeper into the economic data, going beyond her official duties. The frontier colonies, the ones far from Council core worlds, had relied on human traders more than anyone realized. Earth's ships carried grain, medical supplies, mining equipment, and dozens of other ordinary items that major Council corporations considered too low profit to bother with. Now those ships were gone. The Vraxian colony on Teller 9 reported food shortages. A Corvan mining operation on Frostline requested emergency medical supplies after their usual Earth shipment never arrived. The requests came in individually, easy to dismiss as isolated incidents, but Lyra saw the pattern connecting them all. She tried contacting David Reed directly, using the personal channel Earth maintained for urgent diplomatic matters. The response came back automated. Earth's diplomatic corps has suspended non-essential communications. For emergency humanitarian assistance, please submit a formal request through standard council channels. Emergency humanitarian assistance. The phrase made Lyra's skin crawl. Earth was treating the entire galactic community like disaster victims waiting for charity. She sent another message, this time more direct. Ambassador Reed, this is Observer Lyra from the Sendari delegation. I wish to understand Earth's current position regarding Council relations. Can we speak informally? The response took 3 days. When it came, it was from Dr. Anna Petrov, not David Reed. Observer Lyra, thank you for your message. Earth has no current position regarding Council relations. We have accepted the Council's assessment that we are not ready for full participation in galactic affairs. We are focusing our attention on internal development and will contact the Council if that situation changes. Dr. Anna Petrov, Earth's Diplomatic Archive Office. Diplomatic Archive Office. They had moved Anna from active duty to record-keeping. Lyra shared the exchange with Drax, hoping it would prompt action. Her supervisor read it and laughed. Look at the wording. They're admitting we were right. They're retreating to lick their wounds and maybe learn something useful. Good for them, honestly. Better they realize their limitations now than waste more of our time. That night Lyra couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the human delegation walking out of the council chamber 3 months ago. David Reed's face had shown nothing. No anger, no hurt, no shame. Just professional neutrality. Everyone had interpreted that as defeat, but what if it wasn't? She pulled up historical records of Earth's 50 years in galactic society. The data was boring, exactly what you would expect from a minor species trying to integrate. Trade agreements, research collaborations, cultural exchanges, military observations. Nothing dramatic or important. But then she started tracking the specifics. Earth had provided intelligence on krill movement patterns for 15 years, detailed reports that Council military analysts used for threat assessment. Earth's medical researchers had published 47 papers on cross-species treatment protocols that became standard references. Earth's traders had established supply lines to 93 colonies, most of them frontier worlds that major corporations ignored. None of it was flashy. None of it was revolutionary. It was just steady, reliable work that filled in gaps nobody else wanted to bother with. And now all of it was gone. Lyra wrote a detailed report documenting everything she had found. She flagged it as urgent and sent it directly to High Chancellor Vorn's office. The response came back in 2 hours. Observer Lyra, your dedication to thorough analysis is noted. However, the Council has already addressed the Earth situation. Their withdrawal is a natural consequence of their rejection and does not require further action. Please focus your efforts on current diplomatic initiatives. High Chancellor Vorn. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she did something she had never done before. She created a private file outside the official diplomatic network and began documenting everything related to Earth's withdrawal. If something went wrong, if the pattern she was seeing turned into a real problem, someone would need this information. Lyra hoped she was being paranoid. She hoped Drax and Vorn were right, that this was just a primitive species having a tantrum. But Earth's silence felt too calculated for that, too deliberate, too final. Fleet Commander Ostran watched the tactical display with growing confusion. The Krill swarm ships moved in formation, executing maneuvers that shouldn't have been possible for a hive mind species with limited strategic thinking. They were adapting, countering, predicting. It was wrong. 2 months ago, the Krill had launched their largest offensive in 30 years, hitting 3 Tharix border colonies simultaneously. The attacks were coordinated and brutal, using tactics that exploited every weakness in Tharix defense protocols. Ostran had been fighting the Krill for 2 decades. He knew their patterns, their limitations. This was different. "Commander, the swarm is splitting again," his tactical officer reported. "They're forcing us to divide our fleet." Ostran studied the formations. The Krill were creating a trap, using their smaller ships to draw Tharix vessels away from the main defensive line. It was sophisticated strategy, the kind that required long-term planning and detailed intelligence. The Krill didn't do long-term planning. They swarmed, they overwhelmed with numbers, they adapted slowly through evolutionary pressure. They didn't execute complex military tactics. "How are they doing this?" Ostran asked, more to himself than his crew. High Chancellor Vorn's voice came through the communication channel, broadcasting to all ships in the fleet. "All commanders, maintain defensive positions. The Council is coordinating support from allied fleets. We will contain this incursion." Ostran wanted to believe that. The Tharix Empire had defended these borders for centuries. The Council's combined military strength was overwhelming, but something was fundamentally wrong with this battle, and nobody seemed willing to acknowledge it. The Krill ships broke through the left flank. Alarms screamed across Ostran's bridge as colony defense stations went offline one by one. Thousands of Tharix citizens lived on those stations. They were dying because the fleet couldn't predict what the Krill would do next. "Sir, the intelligence database isn't helping," the tactical officer said. "Every projection we run shows the Krill moving in predictable patterns, but they're not following any of them." Ostran pulled up the intelligence files personally. The database contained decades of Krill behavior analysis, threat assessments, movement patterns, territorial markers. Most of it came from Council military observations, but there was another source he had never paid attention to before: human intelligence reports. He opened one of the files, dated 4 months ago. It detailed Krill scouting activity in the outer frontier regions, areas the Council considered strategically worthless. The report noted unusual gathering patterns and recommended increased monitoring. It was signed by a human observer named Williams, stationed at a listening post nobody else wanted to staff. Ostran opened another report, then another. The humans had been tracking Krill movements in detail for years, filing regular updates that Council analysts had mostly ignored. The reports were thorough, professional, and incredibly boring. Just data, observations, recommendations. The last report was dated 3 months ago, right before Earth went silent. After that, nothing. "Get me the current Krill tracking data from the frontier sensors," Ostran ordered. His communications officer looked confused. "Sir, those sensors are offline. The Earth observers maintain them." "All of them?" "Yes, Commander. Earth pulled their personnel from every frontier monitoring station. The equipment is still there, but nobody is operating it." Ostran felt something cold settle in his chest. The Council had been fighting blind for 2 months, relying on outdated intelligence because nobody noticed when the humans stopped providing updates. How much of their tactical advantage against the Krill had depended on information they took for granted. He opened a secure channel to High Chancellor Vorn. "Chancellor, we need to discuss Earth." "Commander, now is not the time for politics. Focus on the battle." "This is about the battle, sir. Our intelligence on the Krill is incomplete." Earth was providing tracking data from the frontier regions. Without that information, we can't predict their movements. There was a long pause. When Vorn spoke again, his voice was careful. Earth was simply relaying sensor data. Any competent observer could do the same. Then we should put competent observers at those stations immediately. We will address that after the current crisis. Continue your mission, Commander. The channel closed. Ostran stared at the tactical display where Krill ships continued their impossible coordination. He pulled up the personnel records for the Frontier Monitoring Network. 47 stations, all previously staffed by human observers. The positions had been considered punishment assignments, boring duty in remote locations watching empty space for threats that rarely materialized. Except the threats did materialize. The humans had seen them coming and filed reports that gathered dust in Council archives, while everyone assumed the information was useless because it came from primitive Earth. Ostran made a decision he knew Vorn wouldn't approve. He opened a direct communication channel to Earth, using emergency military protocols. "This is Fleet Commander Ostran of the Tharix Defense Force to any Earth military authority. We are engaged with Krill forces and require intelligence support. Please respond." The reply came back faster than he expected, but it wasn't what he hoped for. "Commander Ostran, this is Colonel Davies, Earth Defense Coordination. Your request is acknowledged. However, Earth is no longer participating in Council military operations. If you wish to contract intelligence services, please submit a formal proposal through diplomatic channels. We will respond within standard business timeframes." "People are dying right now," Ostran said, letting frustration leak into his voice. "We need the frontier sensor data immediately." "I understand the urgency, Commander. Unfortunately, Earth policy requires formal agreements before military cooperation can resume. The diplomatic channels are available. Colonel Davies out." The transmission ended. Ostran sat back in his chair, stunned. The humans weren't being hostile or vengeful. They were being professional, following procedure, treating the Council's military emergency like a business transaction that required proper paperwork. 3 more Tharix defense stations fell before Ostran managed to stabilize the fleet's position. He lost 2 ships and 400 crew members because he couldn't predict where the Krill would strike next. The battle continued for 6 more hours before the Krill finally withdrew, having accomplished whatever objective they had been pursuing. Ostran wrote his report carefully, documenting the intelligence failures and the gap left by Earth's withdrawal. He sent it directly to High Chancellor Vorn with a copy to the full Council Military Committee. The response came back 3 days later. His concerns were noted. His recommendations were under review. His suggestion to formally contract Earth for intelligence services was denied as premature and potentially damaging to Council authority. Meanwhile, Lyra watched the casualty reports come through her console and added another entry to her private file. The Krill offensive had killed 3,000 Tharix citizens and damaged infrastructure that would take years to rebuild. The military analysis reports carefully avoided mentioning Earth anywhere in their post-battle assessments. She pulled up the old human intelligence reports and read through them again. The warnings had been there all along. The Council just hadn't been listening. Trade Minister Krell materialized his physical form in the Council emergency session, something he only did when situations were serious. His rock-like body held together by visible energy fields pulsed with agitation. 17 colonies are facing critical supply shortages, he announced. Food, medicine, industrial equipment. The frontier economic network is collapsing. 4 months had passed since Earth went silent. The council chamber held fewer delegates than usual. Some species had sent junior representatives, treating this as a minor administrative issue rather than a crisis. High Chancellor Vorn's four arms gestured dismissively. The frontier has always been economically unstable. This is not a new problem. The scale is new, Krell insisted. He projected data across the chamber's central display. Agricultural output on 6 colonies has dropped 40%. 3 mining operations have suspended production. Medical facilities are rationing treatments, all because supply chains we didn't know existed have disappeared. Ambassador Torin of the Sendari stood slowly. His small frame trembled with controlled anger. My homeworld is experiencing a plague outbreak. 5,000 dead in the last month. The treatment protocols were developed by human researchers. We requested assistance from Earth's medical corps. They demanded payment in advance and formal liability contracts. The chamber filled with uncomfortable sounds. Torin was a respected voice, and his people were suffering. Surely Earth wouldn't withhold medical aid out of spite, someone said. Torin's translator rendered his next words with cold precision. They're not withholding aid. They're selling it, at market rates, with proper legal documentation, the way any independent civilization would conduct business. Lyra sat in the observer section, watching everything unfold. She had stopped being surprised weeks ago. Her private file on Earth's withdrawal now contained over 300 documented incidents of disruption. The pattern was clear to anyone willing to look. High Chancellor Vorn stood, his massive form commanding attention. The Council has been generous with Earth for 50 years. We shared technology, granted trade access, allowed participation in scientific research. This is how they repay our generosity, by abandoning allies in times of need. Trade Minister Krell made a sound like grinding stones. With respect, Chancellor, the economic data tells a different story. Earth paid fair market value for every technology license. Their trade agreements were mutually beneficial, and they contributed more to scientific research than they took from it. Vorn's armored skin plates shifted, a sign of irritation. Then, why did we reject their membership petition? The question hung in the air. Nobody wanted to answer it honestly. Lyra checked her console as another alert came through. The agricultural colony on Verd 3 had just declared a state of emergency. Crop failures were widespread, and the insects that had been destroying harvests were resistant to standard pesticides. Earth had developed a biological control solution years ago, providing it freely to any colony that requested it. The program had ended 3 months ago. The Sendari plague could have been prevented, Torin continued, his voice steady despite obvious emotion. Human epidemiologists identified the pathogen 18 months ago in routine screenings. They recommended vaccination protocols and submitted their findings to our medical council. We filed the report and forgot about it. Humans followed up 3 times, offering to help implement the vaccination program. We never responded because we were too busy with more important projects. He pulled up the communication records, displaying them for the entire chamber. Each human message was polite, professional, and ultimately ignored. They tried to help us, Torin said quietly. We treated them like they were wasting our time. Now 5,000 of my people are dead, and Earth is charging us for the cure we could have had for free. The chamber was silent. Lyra saw several delegates shifting uncomfortably. This was hitting too close to truth. High Chancellor Vorn tried to regain control. These are isolated incidents being portrayed as a systematic failure. Earth is one small species among 47 council members. Their absence cannot cripple galactic civilization. Then why are we meeting in emergency session? Krell asked bluntly. Another delegate stood, a Vraxian named Sullen. My question is simpler. What do we do about it? Send another petition asking Earth to return, apologize for the rejection, pretend the last 4 months didn't happen. Vorn's 4 arms crossed. We do nothing. Earth will return when they realize how much they need council access. This is a temporary tantrum from a species that lacks diplomatic maturity. Lyra couldn't stay quiet anymore. She triggered her observer override, a function rarely used and technically against protocol. Her voice echoed through the chamber. With respect, High Chancellor, Earth isn't coming back, at least not on our terms. Every delegate turned to look at the observer section. Vorn's expression would have been terrifying if Lyra let herself think about career consequences. Explain yourself, observer. Lyra stood, knowing this would probably end her diplomatic career. I've been tracking Earth's withdrawal since it began. They're not having a tantrum. They're restructuring their entire relationship with the galaxy. Their economy has shifted to complete self-sufficiency. Their research programs are now focused on internal development. Their military has fortified the Sol system to a degree that would make invasion nearly impossible. She pulled up her private files, projecting them for everyone to see. Months of documentation filled the display screens. Earth spent 50 years trying to be part of our community. We took everything they offered and gave nothing in return except contempt. Now they've stopped offering, and we're discovering that we needed them far more than we ever admitted. Vorn's skin plates rattled with anger. You exceed your authority, observer. Yes, sir, I do, but someone needs to say this. We made a mistake, a serious one, and we're watching the consequences unfold while pretending everything is fine. Trade Minister Krell made a sound that the translator rendered as grim laughter. The junior observer shows more sense than this entire council. We should be discussing reparations, not damage control. Reparations, Vorn's voice rose. For what crime? We rejected a membership petition according to our legal procedures. For 50 years of dismissing their contributions, Torrin said. For mocking them while using their intelligence reports. For accepting their medical research without acknowledgement. For taking and taking and taking while telling them they had nothing to offer. The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates agreed, others defended the council's actions, most just wanted the problem to go away. Lyra sat back down, heart pounding. She had probably destroyed her career, but at least the truth was out in the open. High Chancellor Vorn called for order. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet. The council will form a committee to assess the situation, he announced. We will determine the appropriate response to Earth's withdrawal and develop recommendations for future engagement. This session is adjourned. As delegates filed out, Lyra noticed several of them downloading her documentation. Maybe it had been worth the risk. Maybe someone would actually read it and understand what was happening. Trade Minister Krell paused at her station. That was brave and foolish, young observer, probably both necessary. Will it change anything? Lyra asked. Krell's energy fields pulsed thoughtfully. The question isn't whether we'll change. The question is whether Earth will give us the chance. David Reed read the council's formal apology 3 times before drafting his response. 6 months after walking out of that chamber in silence, Earth finally had the acknowledgement it had sought. The document was professionally written, diplomatically appropriate, and utterly insufficient. Dr. Anna Petrov sat across from him in the Earth diplomatic headquarters on Luna Station. She had been promoted back to active duty after the council started sending increasingly desperate communications. They want us to pretend nothing happened, Anna said. Return to business as usual, maybe with a few nice words about mutual respect. David set down the tablet containing the apology. They don't understand what changed. This isn't about hurt feelings or wounded pride. We fundamentally restructured our civilization in the last 6 months. Should we tell them that? We don't need to. They'll figure it out when they see our terms. Earth's response went out that afternoon. It was brief, professional, and made no reference to past grievances. The message simply stated that Earth was willing to resume limited cooperation under new contractual frameworks that ensured fair compensation and mutual benefit. The Council's reaction came swift and confused. Trade Minister Krell was the first to reach out, requesting clarification on what Earth meant by contractual frameworks. David took the call personally. Krell's rock-like form materialized in holographic form, his energy fields dim with concern. Ambassador Reed, your response to the Council's apology was noted. However, we need to understand Earth's position more clearly. Are you requesting renegotiation of existing agreements? No, Minister. We're establishing entirely new agreements. All previous informal arrangements are void. If the Council or any member species wishes to contract Earth services, we're prepared to negotiate fair terms. Services, Krell's energy fields flickered. You make it sound like a business transaction. That's exactly what it is. Earth provides valuable services: intelligence gathering, medical research, agricultural development, industrial manufacturing, diplomatic mediation. We're willing to continue providing these services for appropriate compensation. Krell was quiet for a long moment. This is a significant departure from previous relations. Previous relations were based on Earth seeking Council acceptance. We've accepted that we're not part of your community. Now, we're simply another civilization offering services in the galactic marketplace. But the humanitarian crises will be addressed, David interrupted gently. Earth is not refusing aid. We're ensuring that aid is formalized, documented, and reciprocated. The Sendari plague, for example. Our medical teams can provide assistance, but we require formal agreements on data sharing, liability protection, and future research collaboration. You're asking us to pay for help during a plague. No, Minister. We're asking for partnership instead of charity. Earth will provide immediate medical assistance to the Sendari. In exchange, we want access to their biological research facilities and collaboration on future epidemic prevention. Fair exchange of value. Krell made a grinding sound. High Chancellor Vorn will see this as extortion. Then High Chancellor Vorn can find another species willing to provide medical expertise during active plague conditions, David said calmly. We're not the only civilization in the galaxy. The Council has 46 other members with advanced medical capabilities. Another long silence. Both of them knew the truth. The other Council species had medical capabilities, but they were expensive, slow to respond, and unwilling to work in frontier regions where the Sendari plague was spreading. I'll bring your terms to the Council, Krell said finally. But David, I must ask, is this really about fair compensation, or is Earth punishing us? David considered the question carefully. It's about respect, Minister. For 50 years, Earth tried to earn your respect through generosity, cooperation, and contribution. That didn't work. Now we're trying a different approach. We're acting like we respect ourselves and requiring others to do the same. The negotiations that followed were harder than the Krill battles had been. Earth sent detailed proposals for intelligence services, medical assistance, trade agreements, and research collaboration. Every proposal included specific terms, payment structures, and mutual obligations. Nothing was free. Nothing was based on goodwill or shared community values. The Council struggled to adapt. Several species tried to invoke old friendship or past cooperation. Earth's response was always the same. Those relationships ended when the membership petition was rejected. New relationships required new foundations. High Chancellor Vorn refused to negotiate directly, calling Earth's approach mercenary and beneath diplomatic dignity. But Trade Minister Krell negotiated. Ambassador Torin negotiated. Fleet Commander Ostren negotiated. Species that needed Earth's services more than they needed Vorn's approval made their own deals. The Sendari Agreement came first. Earth provided medical teams, treatment protocols, and vaccination programs. In exchange, the Sendari granted Earth access to their biological research networks and agreed to joint epidemic monitoring programs across the frontier. 5,000 Sendari had already died. The partnership saved millions more. Earth presented an itemized bill for the services, transportation costs, medical supplies, personnel time, research materials. The total was substantial. The Sendari paid it without complaint because Earth had saved their civilization. The Frontier Intelligence Network was next. Earth offered to restore the monitoring stations and provide regular threat assessments. Fleet Commander Ostren agreed immediately, securing approval from the Tharix Military Command before Vorn could interfere. The contract specified payment, data access rights, and mutual defense cooperation if the Krill attacked again. Trade agreements followed. Earth's merchants returned to frontier routes, but now they operated under formal contracts with guaranteed market access and protected profit margins. The colonies got their supplies. Earth got economic security. Within 3 months, Earth had established bilateral agreements with 23 council species. Each agreement was different, tailored to specific needs and capabilities. None of them required council approval or oversight. High Chancellor Vorn watched his authority erode with each new Earth treaty. The Council's power had always rested on the assumption that member species needed council coordination more than they needed individual relationships. Earth was proving that assumption wrong. Lyra monitored everything from her observer station. Her career hadn't been destroyed after all. Instead, she had been promoted to Special Advisor on Earth Relations, probably because she was the only council diplomat who had actually paid attention to what was happening. She sent regular reports to whoever would read them, documenting how Earth's new approach was changing galactic politics. Minor species were watching closely, seeing that independence from council structure didn't mean isolation. It meant leverage. One evening, David sent Lyra a private message. It was brief, almost friendly. Observer Lyra, thank you for your documentation during the transition period. Your reports helped Earth understand how our withdrawal was affecting the broader community. If you're ever interested in consulting work, Earth would value your perspective. Ambassador Reed. Lyra stared at the message. It was professional, appropriate, and completely unexpected. Earth was offering her a job, or at least the possibility of one. Not as a gesture of friendship, but as a legitimate business proposal based on her demonstrated analytical skills. She didn't accept immediately, but she didn't delete the message either. The fact that Earth had noticed her work, valued it enough to make an offer, said something important about how they operated now. They paid attention to contributions. They acknowledged value. They offered fair exchange. Everything the Council had failed to do. 1 year after the rejection, Ambassador David Reed walked into the council chamber once more. This time, nobody laughed. The delegates who filled the amphitheater watched him with expressions ranging from respect to resentment to careful neutrality. The outer ring seats reserved for minor species sat empty. David's delegation took seats in the diplomatic guest section, the area used for visiting dignitaries from independent civilizations. High Chancellor Vorn stood at the center podium, his 4 arms held in a formal position that suggested reluctant acceptance. The year had not been kind to him politically. His authority had eroded as more species signed independent agreements with Earth. 3 council members had threatened to leave entirely if reforms weren't implemented. Ambassador Reed, Vorn began, his voice carrying none of the contempt from their last meeting. Earth has submitted a proposal for formalized relations with the Galactic Council. We are here to discuss and vote on this proposal. David stood, activating his translator. Thank you, High Chancellor. Earth's proposal is straightforward. We seek recognition as an independent partner civilization with bilateral agreements that respect mutual sovereignty and ensure fair exchange of services. He projected the treaty framework onto the chamber's displays. It was comprehensive, detailed, and utterly different from the membership petition he had presented a year ago. Earth does not seek council membership, David continued. We seek formal diplomatic relations as equals. Species that wish to maintain agreements with Earth may do so. The Council may coordinate these relationships, but it will not control them. A Corvan delegate spoke up, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's light. This framework effectively bypasses Council authority. Individual species could establish any relationship they wish with Earth. Yes, David agreed simply. The same way Earth can establish relationships with any species willing to negotiate in good faith. That's what independent civilizations do. Trade Minister Krell stood, his rock-like body pulsing with energy. I have reviewed Earth's proposal extensively. It is fair, comprehensive, and honestly preferable to our current situation. Earth has proven their value over the past year. 23 bilateral agreements, all functioning successfully. The frontier economic network has stabilized. The Sendari plague is contained. Our intelligence on the Krill has improved dramatically. These are measurable results. Results achieved by fragmenting Council unity, Vorn countered. If we accept this framework, we acknowledge that Council membership is not the highest form of galactic participation. Ambassador Torin stood slowly. His small frame seemed larger somehow, strengthened by the knowledge that his people had survived because of Earth's help. High Chancellor, with respect, Council membership has not been the highest form of participation for some time. Earth has contributed more as an independent partner in 1 year than they did in 50 years as probationary members. Perhaps we should ask ourselves why. The chamber filled with murmurs. Other delegates were nodding, considering the point. Lyra watched from her position as special advisor. She had helped draft the analysis that supported Earth's proposal, documenting exactly how galactic society had changed over the past year. The data was undeniable. Earth's new approach worked better for everyone involved. A Vraxian delegate raised a tentacle. I wish to pose a question to Ambassador Reed. Is this framework permanent, or will Earth eventually seek full Council membership once they have proven themselves sufficiently? David's expression didn't change. Earth will never seek Council membership. We have no interest in joining an organization that measures worth by conformity rather than contribution. This framework is permanent unless both parties agree to modify it. The bluntness shocked several delegates. Nobody talked to the Council like that. Except David Reed apparently did, with the same calm professionalism he brought to everything. High Chancellor Vorn's armored plates shifted with agitation. You're asking us to restructure 12,000 years of galactic governance to accommodate one species' wounded pride. No, Chancellor. We're offering you an opportunity to modernize a system that clearly has structural flaws. David gestured to the chamber. How many species in this room contributed to galactic society for decades without recognition? How many provided services that were taken for granted? Earth was neither the first nor the only civilization you underestimated. We're simply the first to walk away and prove we didn't need you more than you needed us. Silence, cold, uncomfortable silence. The vote, Vorn said stiffly. All in favor of accepting Earth's framework for diplomatic relations. Hands, tentacles, appendages, and energy fields signaled across the chamber. Lyra counted quickly, 31 in favor. Opposed. 12 delegates signaled opposition, mostly species aligned closely with Vorn's traditional authority. Abstaining. 4 delegates remained neutral. The proposal is accepted, Vorn announced, his voice hollow. Earth is recognized as an independent partner civilization with bilateral agreement authority. This session is concluded. David stood and walked toward the exit. Several delegates approached him immediately, requesting private meetings to discuss specific agreements. He was polite, professional, agreeable to scheduling discussions. Just business. As he passed the observer section, David caught Lyra's eye and nodded slightly. She had been valuable during the transition, providing insights that helped Earth understand council dynamics. He made a mental note to formalize the consulting arrangement they had been developing. In the corridor outside, Dr. Anna Petrov was waiting. She smiled when she saw David. "How did it feel?" she asked. "Getting everything we wanted?" David considered the question. "We didn't get everything we wanted. We wanted to be part of something, to belong to the galactic community. That was never going to happen, not the way the council operates. So we settled for respect instead. We stopped asking for it and started demanding it. There's a difference." They walked together toward the docking bay where Earth's diplomatic transport waited. The ship was larger now, better equipped, staffed with more personnel. Earth's diplomatic corps had expanded significantly in the past year. There was work to do. Behind them, the council chamber slowly emptied. Delegates clustered in small groups, discussing the implications of what had just happened. Some were excited about new possibilities. Others worried about the precedent. A few were already planning how to use Earth's framework as a model for their own independence. High Chancellor Vorn stood alone at the center podium, watching them leave. His assistant approached cautiously. "Chancellor, several species have requested meetings to discuss modifying their council participation agreements. They want more autonomy, similar to Earth's arrangement." Vorn's 4 arms dropped to his sides. "Of course they do. We spent a year proving that independence works better than membership. 12,000 years of tradition, undermined by one stubborn species that refused to accept their place. Should we deny the requests? On what grounds? That we know better than they do what's good for them. Earth already proved that argument false." Vorn turned away from the empty chamber. "Schedule the meetings and start drafting reform proposals. If we don't adapt, we'll wake up one day and discover we're not a council anymore, just a collection of independent treaties with a fancy meeting hall." The assistant nodded and hurried away. Vorn stood alone, contemplating the future of an institution that had governed the galaxy for millennia. Earth hadn't destroyed the council. They had simply stopped pretending they needed it. And in doing so, they had revealed how much the council had depended on species willing to accept less than they deserved. 1 year ago, the council had laughed at Earth's petition. They had mocked humanity's presumption, dismissed their contributions, rejected their request for equality. Earth's response had been silence, not the silence of defeat but the silence of a door closing. When the galaxy needed that door to reopen, Earth had been willing to negotiate. But the terms had changed. The relationship had changed. Everything had changed. The Council had taught Earth that respect couldn't be earned through generosity and cooperation. So Earth had taught the Council that respect could be demanded through value and independence. Both lessons had been painful. Both had been necessary. And in the quiet aftermath of transformation, neither Earth nor the Council would ever be quite the same.